I'm having my baby in a week and nowhere to stay. And the widowed farmer does the unthinkable. Emily Wilson clutched her swollen belly as she walked down the dirt road leading to the farm. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and her legs trembled with every step. She had nowhere else to go. Farmer Frank Miller was finishing feeding the chickens when he spotted the slender figure approaching the property gate. The girl looked no older than 20. Her dark hair stuck to her face with sweat, one hand on her back and the other cradling the round belly that betrayed her advanced pregnancy. "Please, sir," she called out from a distance, her voice choked. "I need to speak with you." Frank stopped what he was doing and watched the young woman approach. For 3 years since losing his wife Susan, he had avoided contact with strangers. The locals knew he had become a gruff man who spoke little and smiled even less. "What do you want here, girl?" he asked, not moving from his spot. Emily stopped in front of the wooden gate, breathing heavily. The man's straw hat cast a shadow over his face, but she could see the suspicious eyes studying her. "My name is Emily. Emily Wilson. I'm having my baby in a week, sir. Maybe sooner. And I have nowhere to stay." Frank didn't answer right away. He kept watching her, noting the simple, worn-out dress, the swollen feet in old sandals, the desperation in the girl's brown eyes. "And what does that have to do with me?" he finally asked, his voice rough. Emily felt a mild contraction and leaned against the gate. She had rehearsed this moment during the entire 5-kilometer walk from town, but now the words seemed to escape her. I heard in town that you have a room in the back where the old maid used to live. I don't need anything but a roof for a week, just until the baby comes, then I'll leave." "Who told you that?" "Mr. Bob from the grocery store. He said Mrs. Susan always helped those in need, and that maybe—" "Susan's been gone for 3 years, Frank cut in, his voice harsher. "And I'm not her." Emily felt tears welling up. She had spent her last savings to get here after every other door had closed on her. There was no plan B. "I can work, sir. I can tend to the chickens, clean, cook, anything. I just need a place to have my baby with dignity." Frank studied her for a few more seconds. The girl was visibly exhausted, and he noticed she carried a small battered travel bag in her hand. "Why don't you go to your family?" "My father kicked me out when he found out I was pregnant." Emily lowered her head, shame clear in her voice. "And the baby's father's, he disappeared when I told him." "What about your mother?" "My mother passed away when I was 16. My father remarried and my stepmother didn't want me around." Frank remained silent for what felt like an eternity to Emily. She could hear the chickens clucking in the background, the wind rustling the trees and her own heart pounding desperately in her chest. "1 week, you said?" "Yes, sir. 1 week, 2 at most, I swear." "And after?" Emily hesitated. She had no answer for that. She hadn't planned beyond finding a place to give birth. "After I'll figure something out. I'll find a way." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Frank let out a deep sigh and opened the gate. "The room's in the back. It's nothing fancy, but it has a bed and a table. You can use the bathroom in the house, but don't go into the main house without permission." Emily couldn't contain the relief that washed over her. Tears streamed freely down her face as she followed the farmer across the dirt courtyard. "Thank you so much, Mr. Frank. You don't know what this means to me. How do you know my name?" "Your Bob told me. Said you've had this farm for over 20 years. They passed the area where the chickens were kept. Emily counted at least 15 birds pecking freely, plus 2 guinea fowl that kept their distance from the rest. "They're pretty," she commented, trying to break the ice. "Susan used to take care of them. Now I have to manage on my own." Frank stopped in front of a small outbuilding next to the main house. "This is your room. There's clean bedding in the closet." The room was simple but clean. A single bed, a small table, an old wardrobe, and a window overlooking the guava orchard. "What was your last name again?" "Wilson. Emily Wilson." Frank seemed to think for a moment but said nothing. "The kitchen is in the main house. You can use the stove to make your meals, but clean up afterward. And the chickens need feeding twice a day, morning and evening." "Of course, sir." I'll take care of everything. One more thing, he turned to her before leaving. If anyone comes asking about you, I don't know anything. I don't want trouble on my property. Emily nodded quickly. Once he left, she let herself collapse onto the bed and finally allowed the relief to fully wash over her. She had made it. At least for a week, she and the baby would have a roof over their heads. That first night, as she tried to fall asleep in the unfamiliar bed, Emily heard a strange sound coming from somewhere in the main house. It sounded like crying, muffled sobs, as if someone was trying to hide their pain. She got up and walked to the window. The main house was dark, but she was sure she had heard something. The sound seemed to come from upstairs, maybe the attic. The next morning, she woke early and went to tend to the chickens as promised. Frank was already in the yard, fixing a fence. "Mr. Frank?" "Last night I heard..." It sounded like someone crying. From upstairs. The farmer's expression hardened immediately. "You must have dreamed it. It's just me and now you here." "But I'm sure You must have dreamed it," he repeated, firmer. "And you'd better not go imagining things. Focus on taking care of the chickens and resting for the baby." Emily didn't push further, but she was certain of what she had heard. Over the next 2 days, the sound repeated at the same time, around midnight. Always the same pattern, muffled crying from the upper floor of the house. On the third day, while collecting eggs, she found an old photo fallen among the straw in the coop. It was a black and white image of a young man beside a smiling woman. She recognized the man immediately. It was Frank, but about 20 years younger. The woman beside him. Emily nearly dropped the egg basket. The woman in the photo looked incredibly like her. The same dark, straight hair, the same large eyes, even the shape of their faces was similar. "What are you doing there?" Frank's voice made her jump. "I was collecting eggs and found this photo," she said, holding it out with a trembling hand. Frank snatched the photo from her roughly. "This shouldn't be here. Mr. Frank, this woman, that was my wife, Susan, and you shouldn't be messing with things that aren't yours." "But she looks so much like me, doesn't she?" Frank stared at her for a long moment, as if seeing Emily for the first time. "Coincidence," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "What was your wife's last name? Why do you want to know?" "Please, Mr. Frank, it's important." "Wilson," he said reluctantly. "Susan Wilson Miller." Emily's heart raced. Wilson. The same last name as hers. "Sir, where was Susan born?" "Listen here, girl. I'm not going to answer a bunch of questions about my late wife. You came here asking for shelter and I gave it. That doesn't mean we have to talk about the past." But Emily couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. That afternoon, while Frank went to town to buy chicken feed, she decided to explore the hen house further. If she'd found a photo there, maybe there were more things. Behind a pile of old feed sacks, she discovered a small wooden box. Inside were more photos, some letters yellowed with age and old documents. One of the letters caught her attention. It was addressed to Susan Wilson, and the sender was Jonathan Wilson, the same name as her paternal grandfather, who had passed away when she was little. With trembling hands, she opened the letter. The date was 1985, and the contents left her breathless. "My dear sister Susan, I hope this letter finds you well. Things here at home have been tough since Dad got sick. Mary is pregnant again, but this time we're worried because the doctor said there might be complications. We miss you here, Susan. I know you've built your life there with Frank, but sometimes I wish things were different. Love from your brother, Jonathan." Emily felt her legs weaken. Susan Wilson was Jonathan Wilson's sister, her grandfather. That made her Frank's great-niece? She kept sifting through the papers until she found a birth certificate. Susan Wilson, daughter of Bob Wilson and Mary Jones Wilson, the same names as her great-grandparents. "What are you doing there?" Frank's furious voice made her jump. She hadn't even heard him return. Mr. Frank, I need to explain something to you." "You're going through my wife's things," he snapped, his face red with anger. "I should have known I couldn't trust you." "Please, let me explain. Susan Wilson was my grandfather Jonathan's sister. That means we're family." Frank froze mid-motion as he reached for the box. What did you say? Susan was my grandfather, Jonathan Wilson's sister. I'm sure of it. Look at this letter. She showed him the letter she'd read. Frank took it carefully and read in silence, his expression shifting gradually from anger to something she couldn't quite place. Jonathan Wilson, he murmured. Susan used to talk about a brother named Jonathan. Said he died young, leaving behind a family. He was my grandfather. He passed away when my father was still a teenager. Frank sat down on a stack of feed sacks, looking as though he'd aged 10 years in seconds. If this is true, you're related to Susan. I am, Mr. Frank, and that explains why we look so much alike, doesn't it? He looked at her again, now with different eyes. The resemblance he'd noticed on the first day made sense now. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't know. I only just found out from these letters. My father never talked about Grandpa Jonathan's family, said they'd lost touch a long time ago. Frank fell silent for several minutes, processing the information. If you're related to Susan, then... He trailed off as if realizing something important. What is it, Mr. Frank? Nothing. Forget it. But Emily sensed there was more, something he wasn't saying. That night, she again heard crying coming from the upper floor of the house. But this time, armed with the knowledge that she had a right to be there as family, she decided to investigate. She slipped out of her room quietly and headed to the main house. The back door was unlocked. She entered carefully, trying not to make a sound. The house was simple but well kept. Old but clean and well-organized furniture. Photos of Frank and Susan scattered around the living room. She climbed the wooden stairs, which creaked softly under her feet. The upstairs hallway had 3 doors. 2 were open, leading to empty bedrooms. The third, at the end of the hall, was closed. That's where the sound was coming from. She approached slowly and pressed her ear against the door. The crying had stopped, but she could hear someone moving inside. "Hello?" she called softly. The noise stopped immediately. "Is someone there?" Complete silence. She tried the doorknob. It was locked. "Mr. Frank? Is that you?" "Emily?" The voice came from behind her. She turned and saw Frank climbing the stairs, still wearing the same clothes as earlier. "Mr. Frank, there's someone in this room. I heard crying. There's no one there. But I heard..." "You shouldn't be in here," he said, though his voice lacked its usual firmness. "Come on, let's go downstairs." "What's in this room, Mr. Frank?" He stopped and looked at her. In his eyes was a deep sadness she had never seen before. "It's the room Susan prepared for our son." Emily felt a chill down her spine. "You had a son?" "We never got to. Susan, she lost the baby in the 8th month of pregnancy. It was 4 years ago." Now she understood. The pain in his eyes, the way he had reacted when she showed up pregnant at the farm's doorstep, the crying she heard at night. Mr. Frank. She never recovered. For 2 years, she went into that room every day, arranging the baby's clothes, talking to him as if he were alive. I couldn't bring myself to remove anything from there. How did she pass? Her heart couldn't take so much grief, he said simply. One night, she went to sleep and never woke up. They walked downstairs in silence. Emily now understood many things, his reluctance to help her, the way he looked at her belly, the sorrow he carried. Mr. Frank, who was crying in that room? Sometimes I go in there, especially when the longing gets too strong. I didn't realize it could be heard from your room. Do you go in there every night? Not every night. Only when I can't sleep thinking about them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next day, Emily woke up to contractions stronger than any she had felt before. She checked the calendar on the wall. She hadn't even reached 9 months yet, but the baby seemed eager to arrive. Mr. Frank, she called from her room. He appeared quickly, still in his pajama shirt. What is it? I think the baby's coming. The contractions are really strong. Frank's face paled. Now, but you said it wasn't due until next week. Babies don't follow calendars, she said, trying to smile through the pain. I need to get to the hospital. The hospital is 25 miles from here, and my truck is in the shop. Emily felt panic rising. She hadn't considered the possibility of going into labor with no way to reach the hospital. Is there anyone in town who can take us? At this hour and with this rain pouring down, as if answering his words, thunder rumbled outside. Emily looked out the window and saw a heavy downpour had begun. What are we going to do? Frank took a deep breath. I've helped cows and mares give birth before. It's not the same, but if there's no other choice, you know how to deliver a baby. I know the basics. Susan and I studied it when she was pregnant, just in case. Another contraction hit Emily, stronger than the last. She doubled over in pain. I don't think we have a choice, she managed through gritted teeth. Frank sprang into action. She went to get clean towels, a basin of hot water, and scissors sterilized with alcohol. Emily watched him, surprised by his efficiency. Susan took a doula course when she found out she was pregnant, he explained, while preparing the materials. She taught me everything she knew. A doula? It's someone who helps during childbirth. Susan wanted a natural home birth. Ironically, he didn't finish the sentence, but Emily understood. Susan had lost the baby before they could put their knowledge into practice. The contractions intensified throughout the morning. By noon, Emily could no longer walk. Frank helped her lie down on the bed and began timing the intervals between contractions. They're coming every 3 minutes, he said. The baby's in a real hurry. Mr. Frank, I'm scared, Emily confessed, gripping his hand during a particularly intense contraction. So am I. But Susan always said fear is part of it. The important thing is not to let it take over. Over the next few hours, Frank proved to be a present and caring companion. He helped Emily change positions when she felt uncomfortable, brought her water and damp cloths to cool her face, and most importantly, stayed calm even when she panicked. I can't do this anymore, she screamed during an especially difficult contraction. It hurts too much. Yes, you can, Frank said firmly. You're strong, stronger than you think. How can you be so sure? Because you have Wilson blood. I knew Susan for 25 years, and I never met a braver woman. If you're her family, that courage is in you too. Around 3 in the afternoon, Frank said he could already see the baby's head. Now it's serious, Emily. With the next contraction, you'll push with everything you've got. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong, trust me, she pushed, and again and once more. I can see the whole head, Frank shouted excitedly. One more time, Emily. With a final push that seemed to drain all her energy, Emily felt the baby slip out. The child's immediate vigorous cry filled the room. It's a boy, Frank announced, tears in his eyes. A perfect boy. He wrapped the baby in a clean towel and placed him on Emily's chest. She looked at her son's red, wrinkled little face and felt a love she had never known before. Hi, my love, she whispered. I'm your mommy. Frank completed the procedures he had learned, cut the umbilical cord, and made sure mother and baby were well. What will you name him? Emily looked at the man who had become so much more than a stranger who gave her shelter. He had literally brought her son into the world. Jonathan, she said. Jonathan Frank Wilson. Jonathan, like your grandfather. And Frank, like the man who saved our lives. Frank couldn't hold back his tears. It had been 3 years since he last cried, but now they streamed freely down his bearded face. He's beautiful, Emily. Perfect. Do you want to hold him? Carefully, Frank took the baby in his arms. The little boy opened his tiny eyes and seemed to look straight at him. Hi, little Jonathan, he whispered. Welcome to the world. At that moment, something healed inside Frank. The pain he had carried for years didn't disappear completely, but it transformed into something else, into hope. 3 days later, when the rain stopped and the road was passable again, they finally made it to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor confirmed that both Emily and the baby were perfectly healthy. You did an excellent job, Dr. Paul Rogers said to Frank. Where did you learn childbirth techniques? My late wife was a doula. Ah, I see. Well, I can say this baby couldn't have had better assistance. On the way back to the farm, Emily was quiet. Frank noticed her worry. "What's on your mind?" "The week's already passed, Mr. Frank. I said I'd only stay a week." "And where do you plan to go with a 3-day-old baby?" "I don't know. I'll have to figure something out." Frank drove in silence for a few minutes before speaking. "Emily, I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "How about you two stay? For good, I mean." She looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "The farm is too big for me alone. The chickens took to you. They've been laying more eggs since you arrived." And Emily hesitated. "And it's good to have young folks around." "Mr. Frank, I can't accept charity. It's not charity, it's work. You'd take care of the chickens, help me expand egg production, look after the house. In return, you'd have a place to live and raise Jonathan. And the pay? We'll split the profits from the egg sales, 50-50. Emily felt her heart race. It was a better offer than she could have dreamed of. "Why are you doing this for me?" "Because you're family, and because it's been 3 years since this farm had any life. Since Susan left, everything here turned to shadow. You two brought light back." "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but no, the offer stands." That night, as she nursed Jonathan in the room that had become her home, Emily thought about the offer. She had nowhere to go, no money, no prospects. But there on the farm, she'd found more than shelter. She'd found a family. The next morning, she found Frank in the chicken coop. "Mr. Frank? Hi, Emily, how's little Jonathan?" "He's good, Mr. Frank, I accept your proposal." The smile that spread across the farmer's face was the first genuine one she'd seen since arriving. "You sure?" "I am, but on one condition." "What's that?" "I want you to teach me everything about raising chickens. I want to learn the business properly." "You got it. Susan always said the Wilson women were stubborn and hard-working." "So it's settled." "It's settled." They shook hands to seal the deal, but Frank surprised her by pulling her into a fatherly hug. "Welcome to the family, Emily." The following months brought big changes to the farm. Emily proved to be a dedicated learner, absorbing everything Frank taught about poultry. She also brought fresh ideas, suggesting raising guinea fowl for natural pest control and producing free-range eggs for direct sales. Little Jonathan grew healthy and bright, bringing constant joy to them both. Frank turned out to be a loving and attentive grandpa, always happy to carry the boy while explaining farm life. "Look there, Jonathan," he'd say, pointing to the chickens. "One day all this will be yours too." "Mr. Frank, you don't have to say that," Emily protested. "The farm is yours." "The farm is ours, girl. You're family now." But something still troubled Emily. Despite all of Frank's kindness, she sensed a deep sadness in him. At night, she still heard his footsteps going up to the nursery for the baby who was never born. One afternoon, while Jonathan napped, she decided to bring it up. "Mr. Frank, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Do you still go into the baby's room every night?" He stopped feeding the chickens and looked at her. "Sometimes." "Doesn't that hurt you?" "Maybe. But it's the only way I feel close to him. And to Susan." Emily hesitated before her next question. "Have you ever thought about turning that room into something else? An office, a library, I don't know." "Never," came the quick, firm reply. "That room is sacred." She didn't press further, but kept thinking about it. That night, after putting Jonathan to sleep, she went up to the locked room. She didn't try to enter, just stood there, trying to understand the pain Frank carried. That's when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Frank came up slowly, holding a key in his hand. "Emily? What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Frank, I wanted to understand." He looked at her for a moment, then, to her surprise, placed the key in the lock. "Do you want to see?" She nodded. The door opened, revealing a perfectly preserved room. A wooden crib in the center, a dresser with diapers still in their packaging, tiny baby clothes neatly arranged in the wardrobe, stuffed animals lined up on a shelf. "Susan prepared everything down to the smallest detail," Frank said, his voice choked. "She hand-stitched these little clothes, picked out every toy, painted these walls light blue because she said it was a peaceful color." Emily looked around the room and felt her heart tighten. She could picture Susan there, arranging every detail with love, dreaming of the child they were expecting. It must have been so hard for you. It was the end of our world. Susan was never the same after we lost Gabriel. Gabriel, that was the name we'd chosen. Gabriel Miller Wilson. They stood in silence for a few minutes, absorbing the energy of the room. Mr. Frank, can I say something? Go ahead. I think Susan would be happy to know there's a child on the farm now, that her Gabriel, in a way, brought Jonathan here. Frank looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? If you hadn't lost Gabriel, if Susan hadn't prepared this room, if you hadn't known about childbirth, Jonathan and I wouldn't be alive today. Gabriel saved my son. Emily's words struck Frank like lightning. He'd never thought of it that way. You really think so? I'm sure of it, and you know what else? I think it's time for you to let Gabriel rest in peace. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time to turn this room into something that honors his memory, but also lets life move forward. Frank grew thoughtful for a long moment. What are you thinking? How about we make this Jonathan's room when he's a little older? Susan chose every detail with so much love. It'd be a shame to keep it all locked away forever. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Emily's idea deeply moved Frank. Over the next few days, he was visibly lost in thought, and Emily wondered if she'd crossed a line. A week later, as she bathed Jonathan in a small plastic tub, Frank appeared at the door. Emily, I've made a decision about the room. She stopped what she was doing and looked up. What decision? I want you to help me turn it into Jonathan's room, but on one condition. What condition? We keep some of Gabriel's things. The crib, if it still works. Some of the toys. I want the two children to share the room in a way. Emily smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. I think that would be perfect, Mr. Frank. And one more thing. What? Stop calling me Mr. Frank, your family. Call me Uncle Frank. The room transformation became therapy for both of them. They spent afternoons working there, repainting a wall, rearranging furniture, adapting the space for Jonathan without erasing Gabriel's memory. Uncle Frank, what if we put a photo of Gabriel here on the shelf? That way Jonathan could grow up knowing the cousin he never got to meet. We don't have a photo of him, but we could put up a photo of Susan when she was pregnant and write a little letter to Gabriel, telling him about Jonathan. The idea deeply moved Frank. That night he wrote a letter to the son he had lost. My dear Gabriel, your mother always said you were eager to arrive, that you kicked a lot when she was pregnant with you. Maybe you knew you had an important mission, to prepare the way for your cousin Jonathan. Today I understand that you didn't come to stay, but you came to teach us about love, about loss, and about starting over. Because of what I learned while caring for your mother, I was able to help Emily bring Jonathan into the world. Now he'll live in the room we prepared for you, play with the toys we bought, and sleep in the crib your grandfather made with so much love. I'll tell him about you, about how important you were even though you couldn't stay with us. I hope you're well, wherever you are, and I hope you're watching over your mother for me. With eternal love, your father, Frank. When Emily read the letter, she couldn't hold back her tears. It's perfect, Uncle Frank. Do you think Jonathan will understand when he grows up? He'll understand that he was loved even before he was born, and that he has a special cousin who will always watch over him. Jonathan's move to the new room happened on a Sunday afternoon. It was a deeply symbolic moment for everyone. Frank carried the boy upstairs, showing him every detail. Look, Jonathan, this crib was made by Grandpa Frank especially for your cousin Gabriel. Now it's yours. And these toys here, Aunt Susan picked each one herself. The baby, now 4 months old, looked around curiously, as if sensing this was a special moment. That night was the first in 3 years that Frank didn't need to go upstairs to cry in his lost son's room. The room had life in it again. But life on the farm was about to face a new challenge. One Tuesday morning, Emily was in the chicken coop when she heard the sound of a car approaching. It was unusual to get visitors at the farm, which sat at the end of a quiet road. An elegant woman in her 40s stepped out of a black sedan. She wore a tailored suit and carried a professional briefcase. "Good morning," she greeted Emily. "I'm looking for Mr. Frank Miller. He's out in the pasture. I can get him." "Who should I say is asking?" "Attorney Patricia Miller. I'm his daughter." Emily felt a shock. In all these months living with Frank, he had never mentioned a daughter. "You are Uncle Frank's daughter?" "Uncle?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. "And who are you?" "Emily Wilson. I live here with my son." Patricia's expression hardened instantly. "So my father is supporting strangers now?" Before Emily could respond, Frank appeared from the pasture. When he saw his daughter, his face closed off. "Patricia, what a surprise." "Hi, Dad. Can we talk?" "Of course. Let's go inside." Emily stayed in the chicken coop, but couldn't help overhearing parts of the conversation on the porch. The voices were raised, especially Patricia's. "What's this about having a stranger living here, Dad?" "Emily isn't a stranger. She's family." "Family how? You didn't even know her 6 months ago." "It's complicated to explain, Patricia." "Then explain." "Because I came here to talk about selling this farm, and I find out there's a young woman with a baby living in your house." Emily's heart raced. "Selling the farm?" "I'm not selling anything, Patricia. I've told you that." "Dad, you're almost 70. You can't stay out here alone in the middle of nowhere." "I'm not alone." "Yes, you are. This person isn't family, Dad. She's a gold digger who saw you alone and took advantage." "Watch what you say about Emily." "Dad, open your eyes. A young single woman with a baby shows up out of nowhere asking for help. It's a classic scam." Emily couldn't listen anymore. She took Jonathan and went to her room, closing the door. Patricia's accusations hit her like punches to the gut. 2 hours later, Frank knocked on the bedroom door. "Emily, can I come in?" "You may, Uncle Frank." He entered with a tired expression and sat in the chair beside the bed where she was nursing Jonathan. "Did you hear the conversation?" "I heard some of it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Patricia, she's always been suspicious. After her mother died when she was 15, she became overly protective of me." "Her mother?" "I was married before Susan, to Donna, Patricia's mother. She died of cancer when Patricia was a teenager." Emily didn't know this part of Frank's history. "And Susan? Did Patricia like her?" "Not at first. She thought Susan was using me too. It took years for them to get along. And now she thinks you're taking advantage of me, that you want the farm when I die." "Uncle Frank, if you think..." "I don't think that, Emily. I know you. I saw how you cared for the sick chickens last week, how you pay attention to every detail on the farm. No one who just wants to take advantage would do that. But she's your daughter. If she thinks it's better for me to leave..." "I don't want to hear that. You're not leaving. This is your home as much as mine." Even so, Emily spent the rest of the day unsettled. Patricia's presence changed the whole dynamic of the farm. She stayed in the guest room and made sure to watch Emily's every move as if collecting evidence. "Why don't you work outside?" Patricia asked during dinner. "I work here on the farm." "But that's not real work. Anyone can take care of chickens." "Patricia," Frank scolded. "It's just a question, Dad. I'm trying to understand the situation." "The situation is simple," Frank replied. "Emily is family, helps on the farm, and raises her son here. That's it." "Family how, exactly?" Frank explained the connection to Susan, how Jonathan Wilson was his late wife's brother. Patricia listened with clear skepticism. "And you believe that story?" "I've seen the letters, Patricia. They're from Susan herself." "Letters can be forged. Your stepmother wouldn't forge letters from her own brother." The tension at the table was palpable. Emily tried to lighten the mood. "Attorney Patricia, what do you do in the city?" "I'm a real estate attorney." "Ah, that explained the interest in selling the farm." "How interesting." "Yeah, and from what I see, this farm has great real estate potential. It could be divided into lots, turned into a rural subdivision." "Never!" Frank slammed his hand on the table. "This farm has been in the family for over 20 years. Dad, you can't keep this up alone. What if something happens to you? Who will take care of the property?" "Emily and I are managing just fine." She has no legal claim to this farm, Dad. The comment landed like a bomb. Emily realized that legally, Patricia was right. No matter how much Frank considered her family, she had no documents securing her rights. That night she couldn't sleep. Patricia's words echoed in her head. What if something happened to Frank? What would become of her and Jonathan? The next morning, Patricia appeared in the chicken coop while Emily fed the birds. Can we talk? Of course. Look, Emily, I have nothing against you personally, but I need to protect my father. I understand, Attorney Patricia. He's getting old, becoming sentimental, making decisions with his heart instead of his head. Uncle Frank seems very lucid to me. Today, yes, but what about in a few years? Do you have any documents guaranteeing your rights to this farm? No. Then you're in a very vulnerable position, and so is my father. Emily didn't respond. Patricia continued. I came here with a very good sale proposal. A construction company wants to buy the land to build a countryside housing development. The amount is enough for my father to live comfortably in a house in the city for the rest of his life. And what about me and my son? Well, with the money from the sale, I'm sure my father could help you settle somewhere else. Has Attorney Patricia already discussed this with Uncle Frank? He refuses to listen. That's why I'm talking to you. And what exactly do you want me to do? Convince him to accept the offer, for everyone's good. Emily felt a mix of anger and sadness. Attorney Patricia, with all due respect, this farm is your father's life, and it's become my life too. I won't convince him to give up what he loves. Even knowing you have no guarantee of a future here? Even so, Patricia sighed. Then you two will have to learn to get along, because I won't give up on protecting my father. The following days were tense. Patricia stayed at the farm, always finding fault in everything Emily did. She criticized how she cared for the chickens, questioned the expenses on feed, suggested that Frank was being taken advantage of. Frank tried to keep the peace, but the toll of the situation on him was clear. Uncle Frank, can I say something? Of course, Emily. If you think it's better for me and Jonathan to leave for a while until things calm down with Patricia. Absolutely not. You're not leaving because of her tantrum. But she's your daughter, and I don't want to cause problems between you. The problems between me and Patricia started long before you came here, Emily. She never accepted that I rebuilt my life with Susan, never understood why I chose to live here instead of moving to the city. Now she wants me to do with you what I never did with Susan. What's that? Choose between her and someone I consider family. That afternoon, while Emily was organizing eggs for sale, she overheard Patricia talking on the phone on the porch. Yes, Dr. Richard, can you come today? I think my father needs an evaluation. No, nothing physical, it's psychological. He's making decisions that don't make sense. What do you mean? Letting a stranger live on the property, sharing profits with her. It could be early signs of senile dementia, Doctor. Emily felt her blood run cold. Patricia was trying to prove that Frank wasn't mentally capable of making decisions. She ran to find Frank in the pasture. Uncle Frank, Patricia called a doctor. What doctor? A Dr. Richard. She thinks you have dementia. Frank's face turned red with anger. She's gone too far this time. They returned to the house together, where Patricia was waiting in the living room with a middle-aged man in a suit. Dad, this is Dr. Richard Thompson. He's a psychiatrist and geriatrician. I don't need a psychiatrist, Patricia. Mr. Frank, the doctor spoke up. Your daughter is concerned about some decisions you've been making lately. There's nothing wrong with my decisions. Dad, you let a complete stranger live in your house. You're sharing the farm's profits with her, treating her like family. Because she is family. Let's take it easy, Dr. Richard interjected. Mr. Frank, could you explain your relation to Mrs. Emily? Frank explained again about Susan, the letters, the family connection. The doctor listened carefully. And do you have proof of this connection? I have Susan's letters. Old letters can be questionable as proof, Mr. Frank. Emily realized she had to act. She went to her room and brought all the documents she had found in the box in the chicken coop, including birth certificates and Wilson family records. Doctor, Here's the birth certificate of Susan Wilson Miller, daughter of Bob Wilson. And here is my grandpa Jonathan Wilson's birth certificate, son of the same Bob Wilson. We're second cousins. Dr. Richard examined the documents carefully. These documents appear authentic, and they explain the family connection. Patricia was visibly frustrated. Even so, doctor, my father is putting himself at financial risk. He's transferring assets to people he barely knows. I haven't transferred any assets, Frank protested. I offered work and housing in exchange for help on the farm. It's a fair business arrangement. Mr. Frank, the doctor said, I'm going to ask you a few questions to assess your decision-making capacity, all right? What followed was a series of questions about memory, logical reasoning, and planning ability. Frank answered them all correctly, demonstrating he was in full possession of his mental faculties. Mr. Frank, by my standards, you are perfectly capable of making your own decisions. I see no signs of dementia or any cognitive impairment. Patricia was furious. Doctor, but his decisions don't make sense. Attorney Patricia, making choices different from what the family expects doesn't constitute mental incapacity. Your father has the right to choose how to live his life. After the doctor left, the atmosphere in the house grew even tenser. Patricia, you've gone too far, Frank said, visibly hurt. I just want to protect you, Dad. Protect me from whom? From Emily? She saved my life just as much as I saved hers. What do you mean? You don't understand, daughter. After I lost Susan, I was dying inside. Emily and Jonathan brought life back to this farm, to me. Dad, you want to sell the farm, take me to the city, stuff me into a small apartment to watch TV until I die. That's not what I want for my life. I just want you to be safe. I am safe here with my family. That night, Patricia packed her bags. I'm going back to the city, Dad, but I won't give up on protecting you. You'll always be my daughter, Patricia, but Emily and Jonathan are my family now too. I hope one day you'll understand that. Maybe with time, she said, but her tone wasn't convincing. After Patricia left, Frank was downcast for days. Emily noticed the conflict with his daughter had hurt him deeply. Uncle Frank, do you want to talk? I don't know what to do about Patricia, Emily. She's always been stubborn, but she was never cruel. She's not cruel, she's just scared. Scared of what? Scared of losing her father. Scared I'll take her place in your heart. That's nonsense. No, it's not, Uncle Frank. Think about it. She lost her mother as a teenager. Then you married Susan. Now here I am. In her mind, every time you choose another woman to share your life with, she loses a little more of her dad. Frank grew thoughtful. You might be right. Have you ever tried explaining to her that having more people in the family doesn't mean less love for her? Not in those words. Maybe you should try. That same week, Frank called Patricia. The conversation was long and at times difficult, but he tried to explain that the human heart has an infinite capacity to love, and that loving Emily and Jonathan as family didn't diminish the love he felt for his daughter. Patricia wasn't immediately convinced, but she agreed to give the situation a second chance. Just don't expect me to become her best friend overnight, Dad. I just hope you'll respect each other. Meanwhile, life on the farm carried on as usual. Egg production had increased significantly under Emily's care. They now supplied 3 local markets and had a list of private customers who bought free-range eggs directly from the farm. Little Jonathan was growing up fast and healthy. At 7 months old, he was already trying to crawl and delighted Frank with every new milestone. Look, Emily, he's trying to talk. It's just babbling for now, Uncle Frank. I swear he said Grandpa, if you say so. But both knew Frank was right. Jonathan had become the joy of the farm, bringing laughter and life to every corner. One afternoon, while Emily was organizing the egg sale records, she found old papers at the bottom of the desk drawer. They were property deeds for the farm dated 22 years ago. Curious, she began reading, and what she discovered left her speechless. The original seller of the farm was Bob Wilson, her great-grandfather. According to the documents, Bob Wilson had sold the property to Frank Miller in 1999 due to financial difficulties. The sale price had been well below market value. in a transaction that seemed more like charity than business. Emily rushed to find Frank. "Uncle Frank, I need to show you something." She handed him the documents. Frank examined them carefully. "Where did you find these?" "In the desk drawer." "Uncle Frank, did you buy this farm from my great-grandfather?" "I did. Your great-grandfather Bob was sick and couldn't manage the farm alone. His children had all left the countryside. He needed money urgently for treatment." "And how much did you pay?" "What he asked for. He didn't want charity, so we made it look like a normal sale. But here it says you paid almost 3 times what he was asking." Frank looked surprised. "How do you know what he asked for?" "There's a note here in the margin. Looks like his handwriting. I need $15,000 urgently." "But you paid $42,000. "Oh, that. The property was worth much more than $15,000. I couldn't accept paying so little. You did this to help my family. I did what was fair." Emily felt tears welling up. Another proof that Frank was a man with a huge heart, who had always helped her family even before knowing they were related. "There's something else in these papers, Uncle Frank." "What?" "A strange clause. It says that if any direct descendant of the Wilson family ever needed the property back, you had the right to resell it for the same price you paid, adjusted for inflation." Frank remembered. "Ah, yes. Your great-grandfather insisted on that clause. He said if someday a grandchild or great-grandchild wanted to return to the land, I should give them the chance. But that means that you have the right to buy back the farm if you want and can afford it." Emily was stunned. Technically, she had a legal claim to her ancestors' farm. "How much would it be today?" "Let me calculate." Frank grabbed a calculator. "About $120,000, give or take." It was a lot of money, but not impossible with a bank loan, especially since the farm already had a steady egg production. "Uncle Frank, what if I really wanted to buy it back?" "What do you mean?" "Patricia will always see me as an outsider, but if I were legally the owner of the farm—" "Emily, you don't need to buy anything. The farm is already your home. But it's not legally mine. Patricia is right about that. If something happens to you, Jonathan and I have no rights." Frank grew thoughtful. "And could you afford $120,000? "Not today, but I could try for a rural loan, with the egg production as income proof." "What if I didn't want to sell?" "Then I'd keep being your partner like I always have been." "What if I wanted to sell but keep living here with you?" Emily smiled. "Then the farm would be mine, but you'd always be welcome. Forever." "Let me think about it." Over the next few weeks, Frank seriously considered the proposal. Consulting with a lawyer specialized in agricultural law, she researched financing options and analyzed the possibilities. The idea of Emily buying back the farm solved several problems. It provided legal security for her and Jonathan, honored the clause she had with her great-grandfather, and would also lift a burden from Patricia's shoulders, who wouldn't have to worry about the inheritance anymore. But there was one issue. The bank required a guarantor for the loan, and Emily didn't know anyone who could co-sign for her. "What if I become the guarantor?" Frank suggested. "You'd do that?" "Of course. I've known you for almost a year. I know you're responsible and hard-working. But what if I can't pay? Then I'd take over the property, and it would return to me. In other words, everything would stay as it is now." The proposal made sense. Emily began to feel excited about the possibility. And Patricia, what will she think? "Leave Patricia to me." When Frank told his daughter about the plan, she was surprised. "Dad, are you sure about this?" "I am, and you know why? Because this way you'll never have to worry again about someone taking advantage of me. The farm will belong to Emily. I'll keep living here as a guest, and you'll be free from that concern." "But what if she doesn't take good care of you?" "Patricia, she's taken better care of me than any nurse all this time. Why would she stop now?" "And the money from the sale? I'll use part of it to secure my retirement and divide the rest between you and a fund for Jonathan's education." Patricia grew thoughtful. The proposal really did resolve her worries about her father's future, while still ensuring part of the inheritance she had expected. "All right, Dad. If this is what you want, I support it." The loan approval process took 3 months. During that time, Emily and Frank worked together to present the bank with a solid business plan for raising chickens and producing organic eggs. The result was better than they'd hoped. The bank not only approved the loan, but also suggested an additional credit line for expanding production. "Emily," the bank manager said, "you have one of the most promising agricultural operations in the region. With this financing, you could triple production in 2 years." The deed of sale was signed on a sunny March afternoon. Emily held Jonathan in her lap as she signed the documents that officially made her the owner of the farm that had once belonged to her family decades earlier. "It's done," the notary said. "The Wilson farm is back in the hands of the Wilson family." "Wilson Farm?" Emily asked. "That was the property's original name," Frank explained. "When I bought it from your great-grandfather, I kept the name out of respect. So I'm buying back the Wilson farm. It's coming home." That evening, they held a small celebration. Frank opened a bottle of wine he'd saved for years, and Emily prepared a special dinner. "Uncle Frank, I'd like to make a toast. Go ahead. To the man who saved my life and my son's, who taught me the value of honest work, who gave me a family when I had no one, and who now has given me the chance for a dignified future. Emily, you talk as if I've done some extraordinary favor, but the truth is the opposite. You're the one who saved my life." "How so?" "When you showed up here pregnant and in need of help, I was dying of loneliness and sadness. I'd lost my purpose for living. The two of you brought joy back to me. So we saved each other." "Exactly. 2 years passed since that day. The Wilson farm thrived beyond expectations. The organic egg production grew so much that Emily had to hire 2 employees to help. Little Jonathan, now almost 3 years old, ran freely around the farm, talking to the chickens as if they were his personal friends. Frank was not just a loving grandfather to him, but also a teacher of everything about rural life. Patricia continued visiting regularly. Her relationship with Emily never grew warm, but they had developed mutual respect. She acknowledged that Emily took good care of her father and managed the farm competently. "Emily," Patricia said during one of her visits, "I owe you an apology." "Why, Attorney Patricia?" "Because I misjudged you from the very first day. I thought you were an opportunist. You were protecting your father. I understand. Even so, I was wrong. You've proven to be a good person and a good manager. Thank you. And there's something else I want to say." "What?" "My father is happier now than he's been in the last 10 years. That's thanks to you." Patricia's acknowledgement touched Emily deeply. It meant she had finally earned the acceptance of the entire family. One afternoon, as Emily sorted eggs for delivery, she overheard Jonathan talking in the orchard with Frank. "Grandpa, why does Mommy cry sometimes?" "When did you see your mother cry, Jonathan?" "Last night. She was looking at some pictures and crying." Frank sought Emily out later. "Jonathan said you were crying yesterday." "I was looking at pictures of my mother. Sometimes the longing hits hard." "Do you still miss her?" "I always will. She was my best friend." "What was she like?" "She looked like me physically, but much braver. She's the one who taught me to be strong. She'd be proud of what you've built here." "I hope so." "Emily, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Have you ever thought about remarrying, giving Jonathan a father?" The question caught Emily off guard. "No, Uncle Frank. Why?" "It's just, you're still young and pretty. Seems a waste to stay alone raising the boy." "I'm not alone. I have you, I have Jonathan, I have the farm. My life is complete. But what if someone special came along? I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Think about it now. If a good, hard-working man showed up, someone who liked you and Jonathan, would you give him a chance?" "Maybe. Why do you ask?" "Just an old man's curiosity." But Emily sensed there was more behind the question. Frank was up to something. A week later, he showed up with a guest. "Emily, I'd like you to meet Dr. Michael Johnson. He's a veterinarian and is interested in learning about our chicken operation." Dr. Michael was a man around 35, tall, with brown hair and a gentle smile, very polite and clearly interested in the farm's work. "Mrs. Wilson, I've heard great things about your organic production. I'd love to see the facilities. During the visit, Michael showed his expertise, asking smart questions about management, feeding, and disease prevention. Emily was impressed by his knowledge. Do you have a farm too, Doctor? I have a small property about 12 miles from here. I raise a few chickens, but nothing compared to what you have here. And family? I'm single, never found the right person. After Michael left, Frank appeared with a mischievous grin. So what did you think of the doctor? He seems competent. Why? Just seems competent? Uncle Frank, what are you up to? Me? Nothing. Just introduced you. Introduced us? He didn't come here for the chickens? He came for the chickens too. Emily shook her head but couldn't hide her smile. Are you trying to play matchmaker? I'm trying to see you happy. I am happy. But you could be happier. Michael returned the following week, this time bringing preventive medicine for the chickens. I thought this might be helpful, he said. I noticed some of the birds looked a bit sluggish. He was right. Emily had noticed signs of fatigue in the older hens, but hadn't known what to do. You don't have to pay me for the consultation, Michael said, after examining the entire livestock. Consider it an exchange. I'll help with the veterinary side, and you teach me about organic farming. Sounds fair. Michael's visits became regular. He came twice a week, always bringing something useful. Medicine, management tips, market information. Jonathan quickly grew fond of the vet, who always brought a little gift for the boy, a toy car, a storybook, candy. Uncle Michael, Jonathan would shout whenever he saw the car approaching. Uncle Michael? Emily questioned Frank. His idea. He said kids need lots of uncles. Slowly, Emily began to realize she was looking forward to Michael's visits. He was smart, kind, great with Jonathan, and clearly interested in her. One evening, after a dinner where Michael had stayed late helping organize the chickens' health records, Frank got straight to the point. Emily, you like him. Who? Michael. No use pretending. Uncle Frank. And he likes you too. Anyone can see that. Even if it's true, it doesn't mean that... That what? That you have to date, get married, have more kids? Uncle Frank. What? It's natural. You're both young, single, you like each other, you have everything in common. What's the problem? There's no problem, it's just... I'm scared. Scared of what? Of falling in love and it going wrong. Jonathan's father hurt me badly when he left. Michael isn't Jonathan's father. I know. But what if he gets tired of me? What if he decides he doesn't want a woman with a child? What if... Emily, you can spend your whole life afraid of what-ifs, or you can give happiness a chance. Do you really think he likes me? I'm sure of it. And you know how I know? How? Because he asked my permission to date you. Emily nearly dropped her glass of water. He did what? He came to me last week, said he was interested in you but wanted to do things right, asked for my blessing to court you. Court? His exact words. He's an old-fashioned kind of guy. And what did you say? I told him the decision was yours, not mine, but that he had my support if you accepted. Emily was stunned. Michael had asked Frank's permission to date her. When is he going to court me? Tomorrow, I think. He said he was going to invite you to dinner in town. The next day, Michael showed up more dressed up than usual. He wore a light blue dress shirt and had shaved carefully. Emily, can I talk to you? Of course, Michael. In private? They walked to the orchard, away from Frank's curious ears and the chattering chickens. Emily, I'd like to invite you to dinner with me tonight, in town, just the two of us. What about Jonathan? Uncle Frank offered to watch him. Of course he did, Emily thought. Michael, before I answer, I need to tell you something. What? I have a son. I know you already know that, but I need to make it clear. Jonathan is my priority, always will be. I know that, and I admire you for it. And there's something else. Jonathan's father left when he found out I was pregnant. It hurt me deeply. I'm afraid to trust men. I understand, but I'm not him. I know you're not. But still, Emily, I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm just asking for a chance to show you the kind of man I am. The sincerity in Michael's eyes touched Emily deeply. All right, I'll have dinner with you. The dinner was perfect. Michael took her to a cozy restaurant downtown where they talked for hours about everything. Childhood, dreams, fears, plans for the future. Emily, can I tell you something? Of course. When Uncle Frank first told me about you, I came here just out of professional curiosity. I wanted to see the famous organic farming in the area. So, then I saw you taking care of those chickens like they were your own children, saw how tenderly you treated Uncle Frank, saw how devoted you were to Jonathan. And I thought, that's the kind of woman I'd like to get to know better. Just because of that? No. I also thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Emily blushed. Michael, sorry if I was too forward. But it's true. At the end of the evening, when Michael brought her back to the farm, he walked her to her bedroom door. Emily, I really enjoyed tonight. Me too. Can I kiss you? In response, she stepped closer. The kiss was soft, careful, full of promise. Can I see you again? Yes, but take it slow, Michael. I need time. All the time you need. The following months were a calm and gradual courtship. Michael respected Emily's pace, never pushing for anything. He fit naturally into the farm's routine, helping with the chickens and becoming a father figure to Jonathan. The boy, who had never had a present father, blossomed under the male attention. Michael taught him to play ball, read him bedtime stories, took him for walks around the farm. "Mommy, is Uncle Michael going to be my dad?" Jonathan asked one night. The question caught Emily off guard. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Because I really like him, and he likes me too." "And how do you feel about that?" "I'd love to have a dad like Uncle Michael." The conversation with Jonathan made Emily realize her feelings for Michael had grown far beyond what she'd imagined. She truly loved him. One Sunday afternoon, 6 months after their first meeting, Michael arrived at the farm with a serious expression. "Emily, I need to talk to you, and with Uncle Frank too, and with..." "Did something happen?" "No, but I need to talk about our future." They gathered in the living room. Michael was visibly nervous. "Uncle Frank, Emily, I'd like to ask for Emily's hand in marriage." Frank smiled broadly, but Emily stayed silent. "Michael, this is very serious. I know, that's why I want to do it right. I want to marry you, legally adopt Jonathan, be part of your family." "And where would we live? At your place?" "Actually, I thought about selling my place and moving here, if Uncle Frank doesn't mind having one more in the family." "Of course I don't mind," Frank exclaimed. "It'd be an honor to have you as a son-in-law." "What about work?" "I can see clients in the area while living here, and I have some ideas to expand the farm. We could raise pigs, maybe some dairy cows." Michael had thought of everything. Emily realized this wasn't an impulsive proposal, but a well-planned, sincere request. "Michael, I need to think." "Of course, take all the time you need." That night, Emily talked at length with Frank. "Uncle Frank, what do you think? I think you love this man and are afraid to admit it. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does?" "What do you mean?" "Emily, you've spent the last 3 years building a solid life here. The farm is thriving, Jonathan is a happy boy, you're financially secure. Now a good man wants to be part of all that. What's the real problem?" "There isn't one. It's just scary." "Of course it's scary. Every big change is scary." "Do you think I should say yes?" "I think you should follow your heart." "My heart says yes." "Then that's it." A week later, Emily gave Michael her answer. Yes, she would marry him. The official proposal was done traditionally, with Michael kneeling in the farm's orchard, offering a simple but beautiful ring. "Emily Wilson, will you marry me?" "Yes, Michael Johnson." The wedding was set for 3 months later. A simple ceremony at the town church, followed by a reception at the farm itself. Patricia, who had grown closer to Emily over time, offered to help with the preparations. Emily, can I suggest something? Of course. How about having the reception in the orchard, with simple tables, rustic decorations, homemade food? It would match your style. I love the idea. And I can handle the legal side, prenuptial agreements, Jonathan's adoption, those things. Patricia's help sealed their friendship for good. Emily realized that her sister-in-law, once she overcame her initial prejudice, was a loyal and generous person. The wedding was perfect. Emily wore a simple white dress that highlighted her natural beauty. Michael looked elegant in a navy blue suit. Jonathan, now 4 years old, was the ring-bearer, taking his responsibility very seriously. "Mommy, now will I have a real dad?" he asked before the ceremony. "Yes, my love, and he already loves you like his own son." The ceremony was officiated by the town priest, who had known Emily's story since she arrived pregnant and hopeless. "Emily and Michael," the priest said, "you are proof that God always has greater plans than we can imagine. 5 years ago, Emily came to our town alone and desperate. Today, she marries a man who loves her and becomes the mother of a blessed boy. Michael, you're not just gaining a wife, but an entire family." Tears streamed freely down the guests' faces. It was impossible not to be moved by this story of resilience and love. The reception at the farm was lively and warm. Neighbors, clients, friends from town, everyone came to celebrate. The chickens, safely penned, clucked in the background as if joining the festivities. "Speech! Speech!" the guests shouted. Michael stood up, with Emily by his side and Jonathan in his arms. "Friends, when I was a child, my grandmother always said that everyone has a place in the world where they truly belong. Some are lucky and find it early. Others have to search longer. I searched for 35 years until I found this place, this family, this extraordinary woman who is now my wife." He paused, looking at Emily. "Emily, thank you for accepting me not just as your husband, but as Jonathan's father. I promise to honor that trust every day of my life." "Now the bride," someone called out. Emily stood up shyly. I've never been good with speeches, but I want to thank everyone who's been part of my story, especially Uncle Frank, who gave me a chance when I needed it most. And Patricia, who taught me that family isn't just about blood, but about who chooses to stay." She looked at Michael. "Michael, you restored my faith in love and the future. And for Jonathan, you gave the most precious gift, a present and loving father. And Grandpa Frank," Jonathan shouted, making everyone laugh. "And of course, Grandpa Frank," Emily continued, smiling, "who taught us that family is about acceptance, patience, and unconditional love." Frank stood up, visibly emotional. "Can I say something?" "Of course," and everyone shouted. "When I lost my Susan, I thought my life was over. I saw no reason to go on. Then this pregnant girl showed up at my door, needing help, and suddenly my home was alive again." He looked around at everyone present. "Today I see you all here at my farm, celebrating the wedding of the girl who became my daughter, and I think Susan would be happy. This farm, which she loved so much, is full of love again." There wasn't a dry eye at the reception. Michael and Emily's honeymoon was short, just 3 days at a mountain inn. They didn't want to be away from Jonathan and Frank for too long. When they returned, they found a surprise. Frank had turned one of the empty rooms in the house into an improvised veterinary office for Michael. "Uncle Frank, you didn't have to..." "Yes, I did. Now you're officially part of the family. And every family member contributes what they do best." Michael's arrival brought positive changes to the farm. Besides veterinary care, he implemented management improvements that further increased egg production. They also began raising pigs on a small scale, following the same organic principles as the chicken farming. "Emily," Michael said one evening, 6 months after the wedding, "I have news for you. Good or bad?" "I think good, very good." "Tell me." "I'm pregnant." "You're what?" "Just kidding." "You're the one who's pregnant." Emily sat on the bed, stunned. "How do you know?" "I'm a vet. I recognize the signs. You're more sensitive to smells, avoiding coffee, more tired. Oh my God, another baby. Aren't you happy?" "I am. I'm just surprised." "And scared?" "A little. Why?" because last time I got pregnant, the father ran away. Emily, look at me. She did. I'm not going anywhere. Ever. Understand? We're raising this baby together, just like we're raising Jonathan. Promise? I promise. Emily's pregnancy was smooth and filled with love. Jonathan, now 5, was excited about becoming a big brother. Mommy, will it be a boy or a girl? We don't know yet, sweetheart. I hope it's a girl. Then I can protect her, like Daddy Michael protects me. The transformation in Jonathan since Michael came into his life was remarkable. The boy had blossomed, becoming more confident and joyful. Frank was overjoyed at the prospect of another grandchild. Emily, do you think Susan would be happy? I'm sure she would, Uncle Frank. Sometimes I feel her here, you know, especially when Jonathan plays in the orchard she loves so much. She is here, in the joy of all the children who will grow up on this farm. The birth of Emily's second child was very different from the first. This time, she had full medical care at the town hospital. Michael stayed by her side through the entire labor, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement. "It's a girl," announced the doctor. "A girl," Michael shouted, tears in his eyes. "What should we name her?" Emily asked, cradling the baby. "Susan," Michael said without hesitation. "Susan Francine Johnson Wilson. Susan after Great-Aunt Susan and Francine after Grandpa Frank." Exactly. When they arrived home with the baby, Jonathan was eager to meet his little sister. "She's so tiny," he observed. "You were just like that when you were born," Emily said. "Can I hold her?" "Be careful." Jonathan took Susan in his arms with all the care in the world. "Hi, Susan. I'm your big brother. I'll always take care of you." Frank, now 71, discovered that being a grandfather to 2 grandchildren was even better than he'd imagined. He divided his time between tending the chickens and playing with the children. "Grandpa, tell me again the story of when Mommy came here," Jonathan asked one afternoon. "Again? I've told that story 1,000 times. But I like it." "All right. Once upon a time, a pregnant girl showed up at our door." And so Frank recounted the story of Emily's arrival, turning it into a kind of family legend the children loved to hear. 5 years after the wedding, Wilson Farm had become one of the most prosperous rural properties in the region. Their organic production of eggs, pork, and now goat milk met a growing demand for natural products. Michael had expanded his veterinary practice, serving farms throughout the area. Emily managed the production with competence, and together they formed a solid professional partnership beyond their happy marriage. The children grew up healthy and joyful. Jonathan, now 10 years old, already helped with tasks on the farm and spoke seriously about becoming a farmer when he grew up. Susan, at 5 years old, was a little leader who commanded the chickens with absolute authority. "Mommy," Susan said one morning, "why do the chickens obey me?" "Because you were born for it, my dear. You have the Wilson family gift for caring for animals. Like Aunt Susan, who passed away." Exactly like Aunt Susan. Patricia continued visiting regularly, now always accompanied by her own children. She had married a few years after Emily's wedding to an attorney from the city. Her 2 young children loved playing with their cousins on the farm. "Emily," Patricia said during one of her visits, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "You remember that farm sale proposal I brought up years ago?" "I do." "The price the construction company offered back then was 1/3 of what it's worth today. You made my father much richer by refusing to sell." "How so?" "The area has appreciated a lot. Today this property is worth at least 3 times what they offered back then." "Really? Really? You had the right instinct." "It wasn't instinct. It was love for the land." Whatever it was, the result was excellent. The conversation with Patricia made Emily reflect on how her life had changed. From a desperate young pregnant woman, she had become a prosperous woman, a happy mother, and a competent manager. One Sunday afternoon, as she watched Michael teaching Jonathan how to fix a fence and Susan playing with the chickens, she had a talk with Frank. "Uncle Frank, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you regret anything?" "How so?" "Letting me stay, selling the farm to me. accepting Michael into the family. Emily, he interrupted, since you came into my life, I haven't had a single bad day. How could I regret it? Even when I was stubborn, when I argued with Patricia, even then, know why? Why? Because family isn't about perfection, it's about love. And this farm has never had as much love as it does today. And Susan? Do you think she would approve of all this? I'm sure she would. Susan always wanted a house full of children, joy, and life. Just look at what we have here. They observed the domestic scene, Michael showing Jonathan how to nail a board, Susan talking seriously to a chicken, the orchard plant swaying in the afternoon breeze. It's perfect, isn't it? Emily murmured. It's what Susan would call heaven on earth. That night, after putting the children to bed, Emily and Michael sat on the porch to talk about the future. Michael, are you happy here? Completely. Why do you ask? Sometimes I wonder if you miss the life you had before. What life? Living alone on a small farm, tending to a few properties, coming home to a cold dinner and a TV. When you put it that way, Emily, before I met you, I existed. After I met you, I started living. Big difference. And the children? Isn't it too much to raise two kids who aren't even mine? He finished. Emily, look at me. She did. Jonathan is my son. Susan is my daughter. Not because we share DNA, but because I chose to love them as my own, and they chose me as their father. I know, but no buts. Family is a choice, not a biological accident. Michael's wisdom always amazed Emily. He had become not just her husband, but her best friend and advisor. Michael, there's something I've never told you. What? When you proposed to me, I was afraid not just of disappointing myself, but of disappointing you. Why? Because I'm a simple woman. I never went to college, never traveled, never did anything extraordinary. Emily, you took a failing farm and turned it into a thriving business. You raised a son on your own and still managed to instill exemplary character in him. You won the love of a stubborn man like Uncle Frank. You've made me the happiest man in the world, and you think you've done nothing extraordinary. When you put it like that, that's how I see you, an extraordinary woman who just doesn't realize her own worth. At that moment, Emily understood something important. She had spent years feeling inadequate because of her past with Jonathan's father. But Michael saw qualities in her that she didn't even recognize. Michael, I love you. I love you too. No, I love you in a way I've never loved anyone before. In a way that scares me and completes me at the same time. That's how you love when you found the right person. That winter, Frank fell ill. It wasn't serious, just a bad flu that kept him in bed for a week. But the incident made the whole family think about the future. Uncle Frank, Emily said as she brought him tea, have you ever thought about making a will? I already have one. You do? I made it when you bought the farm. I'm leaving half my assets to Patricia and the other half to Jonathan and Susan. To Jonathan and Susan? They're my grandchildren. They have a right to their inheritance. But Uncle Frank, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I want those children to have financial security when they grow up. And I want Patricia to know she's always been important to me, even when we disagreed. Frank's thoughtfulness in taking care of every detail touched Emily deeply. Even at 73, he remained the loving patriarch who looked after the whole family. Uncle Frank, can I ask you something? Anything. Don't talk about your will like you're going to die soon. We still have many years together ahead of us. Of course we do, but it's good to have things in order. The conversation about the will led to a family discussion about the farm's future. Michael and Emily wanted to make sure Frank always felt part of the decisions, even if he was no longer the official owner. Uncle Frank, Michael said, I'd like to propose something. Go ahead. How about making you an honorary partner of the farm, with the right to weigh in on all major decisions? What do you mean? A formal contract stating you're the lifelong consultant of the property, with veto power over changes that affect the farm's character. You'd do that for me? Of course. This has always been your home, and it always will be. The proposal moved Frank deeply. It meant he would never just be a guest on the land that had been his life for decades. The contract was signed in a small but meaningful ceremony, with Patricia as a witness. "Dad," Patricia said after the signing, "I want to apologize." "For what, daughter?" "For trying to force you to sell this farm. Now I understand it would have been like tearing out your heart. All is forgiven, Patricia. And Emily, thank you for taking care of him better than I ever could. He took care of me first. I know, and that's why I know he's in the best hands." The 10th anniversary of Emily's arrival at the farm was celebrated as an important family milestone. 10 years earlier, a desperate pregnant young woman had shown up at the door. Now, she was the matriarch of a thriving, happy family. "Mom," Jonathan said during the celebration, "tell Susan what it was like when you first got here." "It was very different, my son. I was alone, scared, not knowing how I'd raise you." "And then?" "Then Grandpa Frank did the most important thing of his life. He gave me a chance. And now? Now we have the most beautiful family in the world." "And the chickens are part of the family too?" "Of course. The chickens are our foundation. Without them, none of this would exist." Susan, who had been listening carefully, asked a question that surprised everyone. "Mum, if you could go back in time, would you change anything?" The question caught Emily off guard. She looked around, Michael playing with Jonathan, Frank dozing in the rocking chair, Patricia organizing family photos. "No, my dear, I wouldn't change a thing. Everything that happened, good or bad, brought me here, and here is where I've always wanted to be. Even the bad things, because they taught me to appreciate the good ones." Years later, when Jonathan turned 15, he surprised the family with an announcement. "I want to study veterinary medicine, like Daddy Michael." "Are you sure, son?" Emily asked. "I am. I want to take care of the animals on our farm and others too." Michael was visibly moved by his stepson's choice. "Jonathan, it would be an honor to have you as my partner at the clinic, and then we can expand the farm even more." Jonathan's ambition and determination reminded Emily of her own youth. The boy had inherited her grit and Michael's practical knowledge. Susan, on the other hand, showed a natural talent for management. By age 10, she was already organizing egg sales with an efficiency that impressed buyers. "That girl's going places," remarked one of their town customers. "She's already gone far," Emily replied proudly. When Frank turned 80, the farm threw an unforgettable party. People came from all over town. Old neighbors, customers, friends he'd made over decades. During his thank you speech, he looked at Emily and said, 15 years ago, a pregnant girl showed up at my door. I thought I was doing her a favor. Today, I know she was the one who did me the favor. She gave me a family, a purpose, the best years of my life. There wasn't a dry eye at the party, eye at the you. Emily," he continued, "you weren't just the best thing that happened to me in my old age. You were the best thing that ever happened in my whole life." That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Emily and Michael walked through the farm's orchard. "Michael, sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out this was all just a dream." "Why?" "Because it's too much happiness for one person. Or maybe it's exactly the happiness you deserve after everything you've been through." "You think so?" "I'm sure of it." They stopped under the guava tree where Michael had proposed years earlier. "Emily, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. When I was a boy, I used to pray every night, asking God to give me a family, a wife who loved me, children to raise, a place to call home. And one day I stopped asking. I thought it wasn't meant to be. And now I know God didn't just answer my prayer. He gave me far more than I ever asked for." The end. What did you think of this story of resilience and family? Can you imagine how hard it must have been for Emily to arrive alone and pregnant at an unfamiliar farm? Share in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you know similar stories of people who found a new family when they needed it most. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.